People have asked me if I'm a part of brand innovators, and I think the best way to describe it is that I'm a cousin to that. Right? I'm out in the world doing my thing, trying to get people to play bigger, trying to think about how the world is shifting and changing, and because we have this sort of shared vision around that shared alliance, we're trying to figure out how we can work more together in this, and this is sort of an experiment a bit in that. And I learned the first lesson today from Daniel, which is that you do like just-in-time marketing when the demand is up, you market. So there's my condo or my little bungalow in Costa Rica. For anybody who's looking for a place to rent, I'm just saying, so it's a conversation. But all about how beautiful Costa Rica is, #1 destination for travel and leisure for 2024.
How many people does it sleep?
It sleeps 5.
What's our discount?
Those who stick around, I'll give you a gift at the very end.
Zappos was offering 20% yesterday. So Zappos offered 20% today.
I'll do one of those things where it's actually $175. I'll charge you $200 and give you 20% off. That's how that's supposed to work. Anyway, I'm just throwing it out there because I actually find it really hard to figure out where to go to Costa Rica. So if you guys are interested in that.
Looks great.
I will say, take a deep breath. Again, we talked about this yesterday, how important it is when we're trying to transition from topics. I'm going to do a slightly different thing. You guys have been so narrow and talking about really savvy techniques and strategies for being able to optimize the resources that you all have, which has been really interesting for me to learn more about. But I'm going to expand you guys back out and thinking about sort of where we go from here. So just as a reminder, when I talked about this yesterday, right, we're leaving the industrial era, we're heading into something else. It's requiring a really different way of showing up, and we're so at the front end of it. So I think a lot of the stuff we're still talking about is about how we optimize, a little bit right now with digital transformation and some of the things that we can do with just-in-time marketing or understanding our targets a little better through machine learning. Like there's some wonderful advances that we're making and some thoughtfulness. Like for me, one of the really key things that was interesting to hear was how much we're thinking about really taking care of our customers, right? Not just like in something that we can extract from, but really thinking about how we can add value back. The very first session that talked about 75% of people feel overwhelmed. It's 100% true. Rather than just selling them, another CBD oil or gravity blanket, thinking about how fragrance and candles and that kind of thing are part of it, which I thought was really thoughtful. So we've been talking about that for years too. To see it so integrated into the plans that you guys are doing now is very heartwarming to me. So now I'm taking you to the next place that the world is asking you guys to show up. So remember, for those who were there yesterday, I talked about the forces that were shaping the future, and these are all the things that we build for, right? It's not just digital transformation, it's digital transformation, then requiring economic transformation. It's not the same business models that we've had in the industrial era, right? We bring those into the new era, whatever you want to describe that to be, they need to be rethought, and we need to think about all of these things. So I'm going to focus for a minute or two, just going to go kind of quick, as you know. So here's the question. I talked about like where we are from a society. Let's talk about what the future of business is. My belief pretty strongly is when you spend a lot of time with the people out there again who are shaping things, we're leaving the era of corporate social responsibility, where we extracted a whole bunch of value over here and then we transferred it over here a little bit through some sort of CSR piece that may or may not even be related to the initial business. What we're really talking about now is having a social license to operate. That means every decision that we make takes into consideration the full spectrum of all the stakeholders, and we think about how we can add value with every single decision, right? And all the micro decisions add up. So it's not just like one big, climate campaign. It's really thinking about how we source things. It's thinking about how we treat people. It's thinking about how we partner. It's thinking about the end of life. Like it's thinking about all of that. Indra Nooyi, who was the former CEO of Pepsi, described it as a shift from how we spend the money we make to how we make the money, and really thinking about what that means in terms of all the decision making that we do. And here's an interesting thing. If you guys follow Edelman, there's a lot of lost brand things, whatever, but Edelman's research in 2023 showed that the only entity in society that people trust right now is business. They don't trust government, they don't trust NGOs, they don't trust each other, but they trust in business, right? Interestingly, in 2024, it's down. So that's one thing to notice. It's like below their threshold of 60. It's still the highest of all the rest, but it's also trending down, because this is where we all get in trouble trying to figure out where do we get involved and where we don't get involved. From a 6-to-1 margin around the world, these are the 3 issues that everybody does want business to get involved in, right? A conversation around climate change, a conversation around reskilling, and a conversation around economic polarization, right? I mean, sure that everyone feels as though they have a chance to be part of the society that we're heading into. So as you guys are thinking about your campaigns, know that there is actually demand. Right? We see some things around social campaigns, right? Whether LGBTQ or I wish that somebody would really care about women's reproductive rights in Texas, as we get pings on our phone that are all going the wrong direction. But those are harder, right? I get that. This is where everybody does want you to spend time and energy thinking about this. I'm going to show you, I don't know if maybe we'll show the whole 4 minutes, but this is an amazing woman. If you guys don't know Sage Lanier, she's probably 23, maybe 24 years old right now. This is her giving a keynote talk to Web Summit to thousands of people. She's a student at Stanford, and as she entered Stanford, she wanted to be able to teach her peers how to survive sort of the climate apocalypse that she feels that she's heading into. And many of her peers, like most people under 25, which by the way, 42% of the world is under 25, this is their number one concern, how to navigate this more successfully. So she created a class at Stanford that's been taught now to 22 or 2,500 students. I think she personally has taught 1,800 students. So she is like a force, man. And this is from her own words, the message she would like to give to y'all.
As much as I'd love to stand here and talk to you about the power of youth, offer you a message of hope, the reality is my generation does not have institutional power yet. And the world is going to run out of our carbon budget long before we are anywhere near old enough to change things. So I'd say it's actually up to you. The world's major corporations, oil companies, and fashion and tech are designing a future. And right now, that future includes mass suffering for humans and other species. We cannot transition to renewable energy fast enough to avoid complete climate breakdown. No amount of innovation can change that fact. We actually have to use less energy. And even if we could flip a switch today, and all of the world was powered by clean energy, we'd still be cutting down too many trees, polluting our air and water, and pulling too many resources from the earth. And the reason for that is, fossil fuels are not the root cause of the ecological crisis. The economy is. But we have already cut down 30% of the world's forests. We're already at 1.3 degrees of warming. We've already pulled 80% of the fish out of the ocean. We are running a linear system of extracting resources from the earth, turning them into goods, shipping those goods all around the world, and then landfilling them and starting that process all over again on a planet with a finite amount of resources. Let's take a look at some statistics on carbon emissions. Is it possible to sustainably source materials for the 80 billion garments the fashion industry produces each year and do it all powered by clean energy? No. You want to hear from the next generation what we expect from you in terms of radical climate action. And I'm telling you now, it's not just solar panels and wind turbines. Radical climate action means shrinking unsustainable industries. We now have enough clothes to clothe the next 6 generations. So what is a completely non-essential industry doing, contributing up to 10% of all emissions? But radical climate action can also mean growing other industries. If wasted food accounts for 8% of all emissions, there's a huge business opportunity for development of industrial composting infrastructure and innovation in the food system. In order for us to have a livable future, we need you to work with us on designing a more sustainable and just future. What we expect from you moving forward is a transition towards a circular economy. The circular economy is 2 things. 1, an economy based on services, not goods. And 2, an economy where resources cycle. Thus far, the conversation around solving climate change has been focused on a transition to renewable energy. And we do need that, expeditiously. But the Ellen MacArthur Foundation estimates that renewables can only address 55% of the necessary reductions we need in order to avoid complete catastrophe. So, like I said, to tackle the rest, we are going to need to use less energy, which requires a different economy. Between 4 and 7% of emissions come from mining. The obvious radical climate solution we have is to increase metal recycling to 100% and stop mining. Mine the landfills if you need to. In a circular system, profit can only be pursued by using waste as a resource. If all we can do is less bad, then we are still failing. We must pursue a future where ecological restoration is not just an afterthought to offset our bad behavior, but where it is integral to the economy itself. And we already have all the solutions we need. We're just asking you to implement them. Our survival depends on it. I'm working on making sure that the next generation has the education we need in order to survive in a climate change world. You're the only ones who can guarantee us more than just survival. I don't have institutional power yet. So right now, the most powerful thing I can do is to come to you with this message. I'm holding up my end of the bargain. I know you have your marching orders. It's up to you.
And I love it. She gets this like rounds of like giant applause, and she just like drops the mic and walks off. She doesn't care. All I'm saying, she's only one person. There's many, many, many of her. Right? If you talk to your kids, this is what they're thinking about and worrying about too. So as you guys are thinking about your strategies moving forward, I'm just asking you to please consider that and think about this, because this will be the conversation. And I was thinking about this graphic over here, which I think is really, really cool, by the way. At some point, there needs to be a sort of circular piece of that added to the room windows here. All right, so now we go to the quote I had yesterday about you can't trust your judgment if your imagination's out of focus. I'm just going to take you guys through some quickly interesting things we talk again about now, next, and far, and these kind of things. I'm going to stretch it a little bit and say, when I run around the world talking about this stuff, right, we talk about the changing platforms. Do y'all know what that is? It's a little waifu thing that exists in Japan for many years that people use to like basically mine information from the internet, and like basically that's their interface. So it'll remind you to take your umbrella because you're heading to work. It will remind you got a meeting. It's like, I can't find an image that's not a 15-year-old girl, but theoretically it is an interface that now people are also putting with ChatGPT. So just who knows how it is we're going to connect to things, right? We're going to have headsets on. We're going to have potentially a smart contact lens. We're going to have the humane pin. And we're going to have things that are inside our bodies that are going to be tracking things. Increasingly, there's this whole conversation about whether or not we want to track our glucose levels, so that we will have, all real data all the time. Why? Because we want to be able to interact with our environments like this, right? In the future, it will probably not be a plastic credit card, but it would be the idea that you can make anything smart, and the data will be right there. There's a friend of mine who's just started a company again about transparency and information. I'll give you guys his name, EQOGO, if you go that.com. He just launched it, but basically the first transparency engine. So the idea is anything you pick up will have information, right? But this will be the interface in which we do it. And you will have information, and the built environment will have information about you. It will be this exchange between the two, this whole digital thing, which I thought, again, the example that we had from Albertsons about the fact that they are tied to my Apple Watch. So when I walk to the store and I hit all the rings and I get a discount, like how cool is that? Like that to me felt, again, like you're working on my behalf, you're championing me, it's not like you're just extracting from me. And I feel like I win when I'm in there when that happens. That's the whole, like, again, the line between digital and physical will continue to blur as we move ahead. So I just want to, like, this is you guys are trying to figure out marketing strategies, here's what other people are thinking. Redesigning cities to get to what is usually thought of as a 20-minute city or a 15-minute city. Have you guys heard of this concept? Right? So all your needs will be met within a 15 or 20-minute bike ride or walk, not even public transportation. Seoul has decided it's going to be a 10-minute city, some going to go for a 9-minute city. But the idea is we're trying to solve two things, right? Sustainability and loneliness in terms of resources. We're rethinking work. I did a panel with a friend of mine in Austin at the beginning of the year about the technologies we should be paying attention to. And this was Brian's picture. So Brian Jacobs is the CTO and founder of a company called Data.World, a huge data company. And this is how he uses ChatGPT. He basically makes a list of things that he wants to work on during the day, and then he gets up and for about 90 minutes, he takes a walk, and he puts it on audio mode, and he basically has a conversation with his GPT that has now been trained to understand how he wants to converse. He's made it a she. He's developing an emotional relationship with this thing, right? It's literally, this is his partner as he's going to work. So I don't know if you guys have done anything quite that dramatic yet, but I found that to be really interesting that a person who's so immersed in the world of data is now building a much more emotive relationship with it and making it belong with it. And in case you're wondering which is going for Gen Z, I'll let you read the headline. Yeah, read that. Right. So the question will be again, like, how will they interact with your brands moving forward? Right? And this is the thing, the coolest thing to me that came out of South by Southwest is a woman who's completely redesigned school. So basically, it's like students go and spend 2 hours in the morning working with an adaptive app that helps them understand and learn very specifically, very personally about math and English and whatever the key core subjects are. And the rest of the day, they spend building the things that they want to build or learning the things that they want to learn. It's a complete flip. No teachers are there. It is AI and guides. She's got a 50,000 person waiting list for her schools, and they are outperforming traditional students 2-1. So I just give you guys some sort of thinking about how this all will really, really flip. This is where all this is going. Here's what I'm going to say, and I'll finish up with a bunch of data. You guys are trying to take on a whole bunch of things at the same time, right? And trying to do that in the same way that we've always done it, with the same kind of work ethic, or the same kind of tools, or the same kind of approach, isn't working. People are burning out, and we can't keep up. So what I described as old systems are breaking down, and new systems have yet to be created, and we recognize we're sitting in a liminal gap between those two things, right? And then when we're in the liminal gap, we have to build the capacity to be on the other side, to things that are more dynamic and work really differently. I describe it as a shift from the 20th century way of thinking, which is leadership, which was static, closed, hierarchical, and designed that way to be that way, so that we could have consistent scalability and short-term profitability, to think of it as a verb. So you can think of it as a verb, we build a capacity, so a playbook to set of practices that allow us to survive in a world that's dynamic and inclusive and caring and systemic, and right, and it's designed to support lots of experimentation. We have lots of conversations here about wanting to build the capacity for experimentation in order to be able to create long-term sustainable value. So I will say I did write a book about it. It does feature a whole bunch of extraordinary brands and the stories that they've told about how they got from here to there, from old ones to new ones, tech to not, highly regulated, whatever. I will say, skip through it. Basically, it's the ones that do it right, build the capacity for the adaptability quotient, recognizing how important that is, and they rethink risk. So I'll leave you with this two more facts. One is everything that we thought kept us safe in the industrial era is now creating vulnerability as we move into this new era, right? Working in silos, thinking about things being super in hierarchy, people with tenure have all the information. We heard from someone else yesterday that on the edge, right? People who are literally in your stores or closest to it, who have so much information, how do we feed that back out? So when you think about having courage to go do something risky, I'm actually trying to give you guys the courage to go do something much safer, right? Sticking with the status quo is much riskier than moving into this other world that we're heading into. I describe it as, again, the shift between this old outdated playbook, this new way of thinking that goes from being about being dominant players to being generative and regenerative, right? Working in a society where we're working with each other instead of against each other and building a different set of capacities. I've worked with big, huge brands around the world. Like, this is the way we're shifting. If you get stuck, just remember, we all just deserve to be well held, right? We want to be in communities with our offices and with our teams in which we are respected for our differences. We want to think about the systems we design, the technologies that we advance, and the stories that we tell each other about what's possible. Our kids need to hear that the future is bright and amazing, that everything gets to be redesigned in a way that we can make it work better for people, and that they can be part of the solution. So I really appreciate you guys being part of that. And here's your free gift, is the PDF of the book. Yeah. So if you want a pretty hardcover, there's a discount for it. So there you are, my friend. I have learned something by being.
Did you bring books for us to sign?
I did not bring you to sign. Darn, I didn't think about that. I've been traveling a ton, so I'm so sorry I didn't have any. But hopefully we'll see each other again.
Yeah.
But for me, it's again, I just want you guys to spend time with this way of thinking, right? The next book I'm going to write is about repatterning the future. We're going to redo the future in a very, very different way of thinking, right? We've got all women are going to rise, the voice of the feminine is going to rise, so we're going to pay much more attention to the indigenous, we're going to pay much more attention to youth, we're going to pay much more attention to the patterns in humanity and in nature. And those are the things that are going to set up the framework moving forward. So you guys are part of the front end of that, so thank you for letting me spend a few minutes with you, and thank you for the extra 60 seconds.
Thank you, Nancy.